Mobius effect.
The
Wow.
Mobius effect.
Mobius, that's it. Sorry, I'm really tired. It's 11 o'clock here at night. All right, thank you very much, Dorian.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dom, for that introduction. Many years now, despite the fact that many of my colleagues find it a steep learning curve, or find it hard to use, or find it very clunky and unsexy. Many of them go for Edmodo because it has a kind of Facebook look. And the newest thing is Google Classroom. But what I like about Moodle is the power that it has, all the features that allow you to do things in a classroom, which I'm afraid those other learning management systems, to my mind, just don't offer. So that's my bias and my background. In terms of the gamified part, I've always included games in my classroom. Simulations. I was a history teacher, English teacher for many, many years. I now teach English and I teach IT to grade 8 and 9. We mainly look at introducing computer skills at that level. And I've always brought games into the classroom because I felt that, first of all, they were fun. And hell, I needed something to do on a Friday afternoon when it was really, really hot here in South Africa and no one was concentrating. And, so I started introducing games more and more in the afternoon as attention started to flag. And I found that they were really useful, especially in English. I was for many years a second language English teacher, and games just came naturally. I also run a games club. So they play a lot of D&D, role-play games. They also play board games and, of course, computer gaming. So with all of this kind of floating around in my background, gamification is certainly something that seemed to come naturally to me. Now, what is gamification? Oops, sorry, I'm pressing the wrong mouse button here. I particularly like this definition by Gartner because it the normal definitions speak about using game mechanics in a non-game situation, but this speaks directly to experience design. And I really like that phrase because in a classroom, I think we ought to be designing experiences for kids to help them to learn. The engagement issue, I think I'm less hot on that. I think it's more about learning. If kids are learning, then obviously they're going to be engaged and motivated. I keep pressing the wrong button. Okay, I think there's a big fallacy out there, and that's this gamification equals points, badges, and leaderboards. And where it fails in business, I think it's largely because people have this outlook. Gamification comes from games, and games are not all about points, badges, and leaderboards. I have to say that Moodle's integration of badges in its management system, I think, has been tremendously useful because it is engaging. I think badges are a mechanism you can use. Points, I think, are a mechanism you can use, and they speak directly to grades, for example. When you're grading students, you're giving points, aren't you? The leaderboard part, I think perhaps it's a good idea if Moodle doesn't integrate that. I'm not sure how motivating it is to see that you are beneath your fellows. I know that kids are very competitive, but I'm not entirely convinced that that's the right way to go. Game mechanics really, I think, hinge on this idea of rule-based systems. Our classrooms are also rule-based systems, and I think that's what allows us to integrate the two. And I really like in this definition the idea of exploration. They're encouraging a user to explore a world that gets created and a world in which you can learn. So my vision of game mechanics is very much to try and create an imaginative world. And one of the people that I draw inspiration from is Jane McGonigal. I don't know if you've heard her TED Talks, but if you haven't, I've put a link up on the iMoot course, which just Google her and listen to her TED Talks and other talks that she's given, because she truly is inspirational. And of course, her book, Reality is Broken. She introduces the notion that games have 4, she calls them superpowers. In other articles, she calls them simply powers. But these are powers that games have to promote learning. And she lists them as being urgent optimism, social trust, blissful productivity, and epic meaning. So let's try and unpack that a little bit. Urgent optimism. How often do kids come into the classroom urgently seeking and to do something and being optimistic that they will succeed? Very often kids come into a classroom convinced that they're not going to do that well and quite reluctant to undertake whatever tasks that they're given. Oftentimes you have to trick them and make your lessons so interesting that they get fooled into enthusiasm in whatever topic they're engaging. But in games, this optimism seems to come naturally. This urgency, you finished one task, what can I do next? The second power is about social trust. She also terms it social fabric, which I think is a better term in many ways. Games are essentially social, multiplayer games especially, obviously. You need to trust in other people. You need to collaborate with other people. And as someone who's used group work in my classroom for a long, long time, I know that it doesn't always work. Not all groups cooperate. Students are very often reluctant to work with others. Some feel they're carrying the load. Others just aren't interested in a sloping off. And others just don't know how to work with other people. But in games, it seems to be a natural collaboration which gets fostered. You're working as a group to get somewhere. World of Warcraft, for example, a multiplayer online game where players organize war parties and war bands to go and achieve their aims, and where they have to collaborate with each other. In the games clubs that I've run, I see this time and time again. A newbie comes in, they're not very good, they don't know how to play the game, and the others take them under their wing and show them how to play. Because when you're playing as a team, you need that newbie to get as good as possible, as quickly as possible. And I think that's, if we had that as a model of how to revolutionize the classroom, wow. Blissful productivity. Kids can spend hours and hours and hours engaged in gaming, very often way too much. I don't know if you've seen those Harvard studies suggesting that between 1 and 3 hours is good, and anything more is not so hot. But I mean, a friend of ours, a family friend of ours, was diagnosed as ADD and given Ritalin and so on. And yet he can sit in front of a computer for hours and hours. I mean, does he have attention deficit? I don't think so. Epic meaning. Do kids really believe that what we're teaching them in class has some kind of world-saving, saving the universe epic meaning? I don't think so. And yet in games, this is naturally built in. So I believe that games can be harnessed for better learning. And I set out to design a course with this in mind. I think the other big mechanism in game mechanics is that, a game like Patience, you play against the rules. There are certain rules and you follow them, and you either win or you lose. And that's great, if you've got a few minutes to spend and you need to while away. But for me, game mechanics really start working when you've got a multiplayer scenario where players are pitted against each other, because I believe that unleashes the full potential of human power. I play Diplomacy. That's the main game that I play as a gamer. It's a 7-player game, so you have 7 players. The rule mechanisms are very simple, so don't really enter into it. The heart of the game is that you have to negotiate your way into a win. You have to convince other people to support you. And then you have to obviously break those alliances at strategic moments so that you can, advance. So I believe that in a classroom we have kids, and those kids can certainly bring to the party and bring to each other experiences and that will allow them to unlock a hell of a lot of learning. Does it have to be computer-based? If I look around me, so many kids are playing computers when they get home from school, especially the boys, but the girls as well, increasingly. And these offer immersive multiplayer worlds where they can pit their skills against other players and also socialize online. And I think this makes, obviously, for vastly immersive games. But I don't think it has to be computer-based. I think the world of the imagination can certainly be as immersive and as engaging. I played Dungeons and Dragons at university. I'm not sure if any of you did, but I believe that in a classroom, and certainly using Moodle, we can unlock this imaginative power, this joint storytelling. When I watched my sons growing up, and I saw them wandering around, age 5, 6, etc., you have a bunch of kids telling stories to each other, competing narratives and weaving stories mutually. And in the gaming clubs that I run every single week, the most popular one, not so much the computer gaming, but it's the role-playing games. And the pleasure that kids can get out of weaving a joint collaborative narrative is immense. Can we harness this in the classroom for genuine subject matter that we're trying to teach? I believe, and this is the hypothesis, that we can. So a little bit of background. I teach computer skills to grade 8 and 9. I then hand over the baton to teachers who teach it as a subject from grade 10 to 12. And amongst girls, we have very few girls choosing to do IT as a subject to matric. Radine is, I think you can see from that picture, quite a privileged school, very well-resourced school. And our student body comes to the school largely because it is seen as an academic school. Our rival schools are seen as more sporting schools, and the reason they're here really is for the academic excellence. So that presented me with some issues, with some problems. Here we have kids coming in and they urgently need computer skills to use computing in their separate subjects. The accounting teacher wants them to use a spreadsheet, but they've never used a spreadsheet before. So we introduced computer skills in grade 8 and 9. It's a compulsory subject. They take it once a week. And they learn skills such as spreadsheets, all the Office packages, the Adobe packages, Photoshop, Flash, Dreamweaver, etc. They learn some video editing, and then information literacy, e-safety, copyright, and so on. So in grade 8 and 9, we try to give them sufficient computer skills, and computer skills are not generally taught in primary schools in South Africa. So, I mean, forget this notion of digital natives. What I find is that kids arrive in school and they can go on Facebook and they can click like and share, and they can go on Tumblr and so on, but they don't know how to use Excel productively. They don't know how to use packages, even Photoshop, for example, productively. So we try and give them those skills, and they receive marks for this, and it's an important part of their school package because generally speaking, it's seen as an easy A. So, but I wanted to make it more fun, and I wanted to give them more opportunities to explore different packages. And you can imagine that with students coming in with very differential skills, for the brighter kids, or the kids with more skills coming into the course, they're very quickly going to get ahead, and then what do? So I wanted to introduce a gamified course which would allow them to go at their own pace. So students who hadn't had exposure to these packages before could perhaps take it a little bit slower, and those who had could go further. So why Moodle? Well, because I love Moodle. I love its features. I love what it can do. And unlike those teachers who think it's really clunky, I think you can really make it work for you. If you look on this particular screen, for example, I think you can see that the Twitter feed is quite important, because if you use a hashtag for example, this Mobius effect, this particular gamified course, students could actually use that hashtag to send clues to each other, to communicate with each other, send links and so on. And that can be quite motivating. So how did this work? Well, first of all, the branching structure, which you get within Moodle, I think is quite important. One thing about games is that you don't want to see the whole game up front. You want to see it unfold. You want to see it develop. You don't want to know where you're headed, because you want it to come as a surprise. That joy of discovering what's around the next corner, I think, is very important. And in the first iteration of this game, it was a lot more open. Kids could see all the levels. They could see what they had to do next. And I think that was a little bit of a demotivation. So I ran this first as a pilot project with grade 10 students a couple of years ago. And then last year I ran this with grade 8 and 9 students. So the first time I found students, well, again, it was grade 10. It wasn't for marks in an academic school where performing is seen as vital. And there wasn't the same level of engagement. When I ran it with grade 8 and 9 students, where the XP that they gained did earn them credit towards marks, I found it worked a lot better. So the branching structure, for example, works that, first of all, they would read the mission. So here's the mission statement. I've got this fake character, Jane Muller. She's a professor of astrophysics. I even created a fake Twitter account. I love fake Twitter accounts. As an English teacher, I've run Twitter plays. So you get each student in the class to take on a particular character. I create fake Twitter accounts that they can use, and then they tweet in character. And what's really great about that is even minor characters in a play have a point of view, which can really open up the play. So, for example, when I did the Merchant of Twitter, it was one of the servants who she just happened to, the girl who drew that role happened to be very comfortable on Twitter and very vocal. And the whole play was littered with her very witty observations about the major characters around her and what they were up to. What I find works in this situation, if you have a Twitter account, first of all, this alter ego, if you like, or this player in the game can distribute clues, can intervene in the game, and because it's not you, the teacher, because it's another character, it kind of takes on a life and a world of its own. So Professor Jane Muller, the basic story behind this game is it's a saving the universe type of game. There's something has been unleashed in the universe, which she's called the Mobius effect. She's discovered it, and she is the one who has the skills, with the help, obviously, of the students, to uncrack this and beat the aliens and save the planet. So, and to do that, the students have to create their own avatars. So once they've read the mission statement and accepted it, they then create their own dossiers. And I use things like cartoonize.net. They can upload a picture of themselves and then make it into a cartoon, an avatar. And then they can paste that picture into their dossier. I love the little tick box at the end, I accept the mission. And as they gain badges, they can put it into their dossier. And I think this creates a world for the students to experience the game itself. Secondly, I wanted to bring in collaboration. So I created within chat, Moodle has this absolutely fantastic feature where you can create separate chat rooms for different groups. So you can do it for different classes within a year group or different groups within a class. I called this Geek Girl Team Radio. The whole notion is that these geek girls are going to save the planet, help Jane Muller save the planet by doing IT-related tasks, which will help that process along, and by solving clues along the way. And the importance of the chat is that the puzzles, particularly for the puzzles, they can communicate with each other trying to solve the clues. And you want a kind of silence area because the team that obviously does it first will receive points for it. So by splitting them up into groups, I found that incredibly motivating because they would then use the chat radio, and they love to do that in class, anything involving chat. I remember a handbook from Moodle from many, many years ago. The main advice it gave was about the chat module, turn it off. I think anything which involves students talking to each other is a good thing. So then we get to the first level of the game. So they've accepted the mission, and of course, the content of this game really was about IT skills. So this particular level is for spreadsheets. I also had a level for database, for PowerPoint, for Adobe Flash, Photoshop, etc., etc. So the kind of conceit is that there are some assignments that they have that Jane has given them. These are files which have been corrupted by the aliens, and she needs the geek girls to fix them up. So you download each of these spreadsheets, you fix it up by doing whatever you have to do, and then you upload it. Once you've uploaded all of them and you've fixed the spreadsheets correctly, you get the points, the experience points. Anyone who's played D&D will know that adventurers pick up experience points by following certain activities along the way. So by completing each spreadsheet, you would pick up, let's say, 20 experience points. When you get 100 experience points, you get the badge. And you can see here the picture there shows the badge for this level. Once you've completed all of that, under the branching mechanism in Moodle, you then get a clue. But we'll come to that in a moment. You'll notice there's a section at the bottom, need some help. And these are tutorials. I do them in PowerPoint and then convert them into Flash. And it basically walks through different skills which you would need when completing spreadsheets. So, for example, how do you do a VLOOKUP? How do you do a drop-down list? How do you do conditionals, etc.? Here's an example of a spreadsheet. This one is a time calculator. So you type in a time, and you've got to put in a formula for calculating the hours, minutes, and seconds between the time you input and now. So students need, this is not something I would teach in class. So students would need to research how to create this formula. They'd need to think about it and experiment a little bit. How do you, for example, eliminate the minutes and the hours, to leave just the seconds? So it displays as hours, minutes, and seconds. So it's a fairly complex task, especially for a grade 8 and 9 student. What I find works about this type of presentation is if you just look at the spreadsheet, they've downloaded it. There's the Jane Muller, and she's got a little speech bubble, and she basically says what you need to do, and there are any hints available. You can do it straight on the spreadsheet, do any necessary formatting, and upload. And I find that works very well. Students respond to this kind of isolated task, especially if they've got a sense of how many can I finish this period or after school or whatever, and try and get ahead of other groups so that we do better at it. In terms of the grading, I do all or nothing grading. So if you look at this is the Moodle rubric. So those are the names of spreadsheets: weight and mass, planetary distance, etc. And you either haven't done it yet or you haven't completed it correctly, you get 0. And once it's totally correct and formatted correctly, then you would get the 20 points, the 20 experience points. So it would add up to 100. So you need to actually succeed totally. You don't get part points. You don't get 75%. on any particular spreadsheet. You actually need to get it perfect, and I think that's a very important life skill. And what's different about a game, when you're playing a game and you're up against a fight, you either win or you lose. You know, and the consequences for losing are that you die. I do believe, though, that students should be given chance to put things right. When you're playing a game and you die, you start again, and you use what you've learned to make sure that you don't die a second time. So I keep this open. Students can submit as many times as possible. It's not automatically graded. I look at the spreadsheets in this particular level. It's all spreadsheets. I look at those and I see what's right, what's wrong, and in the little comment box, I can obviously leave comments if I feel if I want to say to them, look, you're so close, but there's just this little thing that's not working. And I find that works quite well. And then, of course, when you've got all of them, you get the badge. The badges, I created all of these in Photoshop, and I kept them simple because I don't want to spend hours and hours making them. But I tried to make each badge fit the character of the application. So, for example, the one at the top, Geek Girl Level 6, is for Flash. So she looks a little bit Flash to me. I don't know if it looks Flash for kids. The website file looks like someone who might design websites, etc. So I try to get kind of different characters to draw in, different types of girls who, and try and reflect their different identities in the assignment. In terms of the puzzles, so once you've completed all of the assignments for a level, and you can have as many as you want. So if you want to scale it, you could have, instead of just 5 spreadsheet assignments, you could have 10 spreadsheet assignments and make it much more meaty. They then get a clue. So this is all they're given. It's a little document. It has those strange letters in it, and it's obviously they need to decode it. Sometimes students don't realize that, and they think, what the hell is this? And they sit paralyzed for a while. But once 1 or 2 groups have started to try to decode it, they quite quickly cotton on. So the whole idea is that they need to use some kind of substitution code. The clue here obviously is the apostrophe. And if you look through that and you see apostrophe, you realize it's a sentence which can be decoded. And then how many sentences have, how many words have that many letters with an apostrophe in it. So, you can start testing hypotheses and actually crack this code. What I do is, it's a group submission. So one member of the group cracks it, the whole group gets the experience points. And you can add bonus points for the first group to submit as well. And I find that is quite motivating. Kids will race to finish the assignments in a level so that they can get to the puzzle, so that they can be the first to get the puzzle. So that works quite well. That's not something I did in the first iteration of this, but adding more and more of these really game-like elements I found worked quite well. How do the puzzles work? Well, each level has its own puzzle, and the puzzles cumulatively build up to a mega puzzle. So this is a clue from later on. This is in fact quite an easy clue because they've already done the hard work in the previous level. But you can see that now we've got destructive laser beams, and it's much closer to saving the planet, and it builds up to a climactic saving the planet outcome. They submit the puzzle, obviously, and the first group gets bonus points. What have been failures in this program? What have been successes? I think part of the failures have been that, first of all, when I tried it as a pilot project with the grade 8s, with the grade 10s, they were a bit bewildered. I saw them only once every 2 weeks. Computer skills was not something that carried marks, so it was not something they needed on their final report card. And so it was not. They looked at me as if I was, as if I'd come from Mars or something. You want us to do what? And how does this fit in with, getting good marks and ending up going to Harvard? So that it didn't work very well. And so what I then did was add more of the kind of mission and game elements to it. And I found with the younger students, grade 8 and 9, they took to it a lot better. So this year, which is the second year I'm running this, I've just introduced it about a week ago. It's just before our mid-year exams. Grade 8, 9, and 10. Grade 8 is first year of high school. So they are 13 turning 14 in grade 8. And what I found this year is there was a much greater eagerness. Almost immediately, students started signing on. And what I've got here on the guest access, I hope you've been able to access it via guest access. If not, you can do so. I hope it works. My network administrator assures me it will. I tested it and tried it, but I'm not sure. I might have extra permissions or something. This is a kind of ghost one. Obviously, you won't see any of the students on here, or you shouldn't. How much collaboration is between former students and current students? You mean from one grade to another grade? I'm not sure. If it happens, then if they end up learning the packages, if they can do the spreadsheet formulae and so forth, that's absolutely fantastic. If they learn how to work Photoshop better, I'm all for it. I'm not one who believes that succeeding is about not cheating. If you cheat, and you can cheat, well, the better for you. If you've got the information from someone else, as long as you can perform it yourself, that's great. The puzzles, you have to be quite inventive and creative about that. And I kind of work backwards, half the way, and then half the way from the front. So I kind of know where I want to end up. And then I try to sort of put successive steps in place to try and get there. In terms of puzzles, one thing that does work quite well is to have some kind of online clue. So if you get them to for example, that substitution encryption, once they've worked out the sentence, they can then use that to decode another message. And if that other message is a website, then when they click on the website, there's another clue. I just feel that works, a lot better. And if you build one clue leading to another clue, that seems to work quite well. Well, that's all about all I have to say about that. So I'm opening up for questions. Yes, because I do change the clues between years because, first of all, I think of better clues as I'm writing it, as they're working it. Some get, they are so easy, and if they get them too quickly, I don't think that's too good a thing. It needs to be quite difficult, I think. You need to think about it a bit. You want them to be excited about solving something, and if they solve it too quickly, it becomes demotivating. On the other hand, I think clues that are too difficult also demotivate, because after sitting there for half an hour and they just have no clue, obviously kids are really, really busy these days. They move on to the next thing and forget about it. So you want something that they can really solve in about 15 to 20 minutes if they're sitting working together, or that it might take half an hour or 40 minutes if they when they get home. I have seen some improvements in outcomes, yeah. And I think one of the main reasons that is, before, what I was largely doing was setting an assignment, setting a task, going through, giving students what they needed to be able to perform that task, and then opening it up for them to take the project a little bit further. So, for example, when teaching Flash, I would show them, for example, button behaviors or drag and drop behaviors, and then challenge them to create a game out of that. So I would be showing them step by step, and that involved a lot of my time standing in the front of the classroom showing students how to do something, and then walking around and helping them do it on their own, and then a further session where they had to take that a little bit further. And what I found is that that's quite restrictive because they tend to use just the skills that you've shown them. Whereas if you can throw in, instead of doing 2 spreadsheet assignments, you can throw in 5 or 6. You can add extra formulae, extra challenges, and I think that pushes them a little bit further. Some of the students, of course, don't complete all of the levels. So for whatever reason, they just don't have enough time. Students are very busy these days, and computer skills is, comes down the order. They're more concerned with their science, maths, English. And so very often, especially if they're sickly or absent, they do lose out on certain assignments. So not all of them complete all of the levels, but I do think it gets more done. I don't know if each task is more difficult or more challenging, but certainly I think they get more done in the end. I'm wondering if anyone else has tried anything similar that they'd like to share with us. Um, if you do a hands up, we can hand over the mic. Feedback from students, um, not really, except for shining faces and we got it, sir. We beat the other groups. We were the first, and that kind of thing. Or perplexed looks, and I'm not getting this. I don't know how to do it. Um, so, I mean, the feedback largely that I get tends to be about how do you perform each task. So, in that time calculation one, I found that stumps a lot of students. They just can't work out how to separate the hours, minutes, and you can do from now um, to the time you type in, and it's one minus the other. That's quite easy, but how do you separate the hours, minutes, and seconds? 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour. It is quite a challenging task, and very often they get stuck. And a lot of my feedback is around, trying to help them work through that. Is there anyone who's tried something similar, or maybe not on the same scale, but with smaller tasks? Or I'd be very keen to find out. Well, exactly. I have to do a bit of trial and error as well. In terms of stuff that I've done previously in my English classes, I did a lot of role play games. So what I would do is I would get students to sit in groups, and they would all assume a particular character. I tried to take it out of the kind of Dungeons and Dragons fantasy genre and put it into more modern context. So we would take something from the news, for example, something that was going on around us, and I would have the characters would be people like doctors or nurses, reporters. Okay, sorry, can you hear me? I was booted off. Can you hear me? Okay. Sorry about that. I just was disconnected. Problem with internet in South Africa, very, very poor. So I was talking about what I did previously in English classrooms. So some kind of situation from the modern world with characters from the modern world. So domestic servants, teachers, policemen, whatever it is, and then give them a situation, and they would sit around in their groups discussing what are we going to do next. And then I would come whenever they decided that they wanted to do something, they would say, we want to do this. And I would make totally off the top of my head, I would say to them, okay, roll a dice, you need 4, 5, or 6, and it succeeds. If you get a 1, 2, or 3, it doesn't succeed, you have to think again. And I would just walk from group to group, throwing this at them. And what I found worked very well was that I was teaching mainly Zulu students. I was down in Durban at the time, and Zulu, the Zulu culture is very, very cohesive culture. And even in an English classroom, they would tend to resist talking English. So because they all shared this very strong linguistic identity, you would hear Zulu, Zulu, Zulu all the time. And what I found was that it was far less so when doing this kind of role play game. I don't know why, but I think their sort of level of engagement and also the ideas that they had to discuss, a lot of the vocabulary just worked better in English. So I've used games like this in the classroom for a long, long time and found they work very well. This particular, the Mobius effect, I think is a lot more technocratic, if you like, because it's computer skills. Performing spreadsheets is not a very exciting task. So I was trying to jazz it up, if you like. Melanie, emergency preparedness. Yeah, I think so much has to do with the ethos of the school. You mentioned games in education, and for a lot of school administrators, I'm sure that puts them off immediately. So you really have to go very slowly. And a school like Radin, which prides itself on academic excellence, this is something I had to take very, very slowly. I now think I'm at the stage where I'm ready to move over, so that the gamified course itself becomes the entire course, rather than just an added extra for when students have finished other work. And the XP that they gain within the game becomes their grade. So I think I'm now ready to move to that level, not this year, but next year. And I think I can now have a position where I can sell that to parents. Parents are particularly. Okay, sorry, I lost connection again. I was talking about parents, and I think parents in particular, if you think about it, in a heavily academic school, what they're looking at is to get their son or daughter, in this case, into a good university. and anything that hints of games and might take away from academic excellence is certainly frowned on. But what I found is if you can show parents what it is that students have been doing, and by giving parents access to Moodle, I think you can do that. The moment a father, for example, realizes that his daughter in grade 8 or 9 can do a VLOOKUP and a conditional formula, thinks, okay, well, obviously they can do spreadsheets, and they tend to relax a lot more. The fact that it's a computer skills course as well, and not as academically high status, I think is also a help. But it is something I've been very, very careful about and very conservative in terms of introducing a gamified course as the course itself. So for the last year, and then this year again, I'm just introducing it as an adjunct and testing reaction and feedback. And then I think I can move it next year into being the course itself. Yeah, I'm sure many fathers can't. I'm not sure I can either. Not without cheating. But it's very useful. And if you do it as part of the regular syllabus, you have half your class looking totally nonplussed. But if it's something in a game format where if you just need that level, a kid will go to other kids and find out, how the hell did you do that? How do you do this VLOOKUP? I don't know. And especially if they're in a group, the other group members will help them out. And that's exactly what you want. Are there any other questions or comments? I have a funny feeling, that a lot of these very dry computational things are actually very good for general brain power. The ability to, for example, to concatenate. I think it helps develop brain power. Because how does concatenation differ from addition? And just looking at those differences, I think very valuable. And also in terms of what you can do with a spreadsheet. Plugins for the Moodle site? No, not particularly. We have a very difficult network arrangement. It doesn't seem to work half the time, and I try to keep any kind of off-site plugins and things to a minimum. So I just use the standard Moodle plugins. As I was saying, about the leaderboards, and I see some discussion on creating leaderboards. I'm not even convinced it's a good idea. Yeah, and I think we have to do a lot of troubleshooting and thinking, and a lot of our thinking is around computers these days. We need to be able to hack our machines. We really do. Otherwise, the humanities are in trouble. Yeah, group leaderboards might be a good idea. It brings in a competitive element, but it doesn't name names, if you like. I can think of nothing more demotivating. What if you're sitting at the bottom of the leaderboard? What do you feel? It's great if you're right at the top, but if you're towards the bottom, do you start giving up? I'm wondering. But if your group is at the bottom, there's motivation because you together with other people. It's not a personal failure. It's about maybe we can put a bit more effort in and improve. Yeah, I mean, we spend so many hours trying to keep reports and things, private. Yeah, the self-fulfilling prophecy. That worries me a lot, and yet, what can you do about it? It's very much human nature. The kids who always put their hands in the air. You don't want to knock them down either, and when they produce the goods, and yet is it you who's causing that? Are there any other questions or comments? Anyone who's done anything? I'm going to give you my email address if anyone would like to continue this conversation and perhaps share ideas and enthusiasms. So that's my email address. If anyone wants to email me, we can have a chat. I'd really like that.
Hi, Dorian. It's Dom from the iMoot team. I thought it'd be a good time to interrupt and just say thank you very much for your very insightful presentation. I could almost see a business opportunity here for you. If you get enough teachers involved, you might be able to set them up, because the ideas are I found them very interesting. And unfortunately, I've only got a 9-year-old, but he couldn't grab some of those things, but I'm tempted to write a few apps for him now. In any case, thank you very much for that very insightful presentation, and I'll stop the recording now, and thank you for being part of the iMoot team this year.
Thank you, Dom, and thank you, everyone.